Welcome to Leap Listens. I'm Sarah McGregor.
And I'm Roger Kalis.
Leap Listens is brought to you by Leap Create. We are a people communications agency and we work with organisations to help communicate their culture, to attract and recruit candidates and to engage and retain employees through creative and digital projects and campaigns. Today we're joined by Ryan Hemmant.
Thanks very much for having me.
So Ryan, tell us about you and your work at Aviv.
I'm the recruitment marketing manager at Aviv Group. Your listeners may not have heard of Aviv before, but it's a scale-up prop tech that owns some fairly reputable brands across Europe, predominantly sort of France and Germany. Its mission, as it were, is to make the process of buying or selling a property less stressful. If anyone's been through it, it's not exactly the nicest experience in the world. So we use sort of intuitive technologies and applications to try and make that process just that little bit easier, a little bit more sort of fluid. My role is all about the top of the recruitment funnel. So the awareness of Aviv, the engagement of candidates, and converting them to applicants. But I do like to get myself in a myriad of other projects too, like D&I, the company review strategy, employee experience, and sort of candidate experience as well.
Organisations will obviously not want to kill their employer brand, as the title of this podcast is. You wrote an article on LinkedIn about this at the end of last year. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, hearing that back, perhaps my use of the word kill was a bit overzealous, maybe a little bit too aggressive. But what I was trying to get across is that so many TA functions, so many businesses generally have such a strong focus on attraction, but then fall down when they have a flawed candidate experience. They do this big campaign about how amazing they are, what a great company they are to work for, how decisive they are, how quickly they pivot, but then have a 10-page application form and an 8-stage interview process, which isn't exactly the definition of fast-paced or decisive. That then leads to candidates falling out of love with the process and either remaining where they are with their current employer or progressing quicker with a different option. It's more around making sure that what you're saying in your employer brand, your campaigns, your general sort of EVP, let's call it, is that representative of the candidate experience. And once they've actually got into your recruitment funnel, are you giving them the strongest possible experience?
As a technology business, I'm sure technology plays a big part in this for you. But what would you say are some of the key challenges organisations are facing around their candidate journey?
There's two answers, I guess, I would give to this. The first is, from a business perspective, it's the continuous improvement of the candidate experience. Just like a lot of employer brand and recruitment marketing initiatives, a lot of people see them as a lovely project they do once, put their stamp on it, and then never really look back at it again. The candidate experience is ever evolving because the market is ever evolving, candidates are ever evolving, so should be measured as part of the recruitment function's KPIs with the use of satisfaction surveys, NPS scores, withdrawal rates. And then the other part of that is how to I always hear this around sort of the candidate experience is how do we keep the experience personal to each candidate? It's so easy to say, but you try selling an overburdened recruitment team with 300 vacancies, they need to make a personal experience for every single candidate they speak to at every single point of the recruitment process. It's really difficult to do. And as you've already said, tech plays a major role in the candidate experience. And there is a piece of software. Am I allowed to name specific pieces of software?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, cool. So it's called Candidate ID, which I've not actually onboarded myself. I'm really quite keen on. I'm sure there's plenty of other sort of options out there which are fairly similar, but it's well worth looking into. It's like marketing automation for the recruitment funnel. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sponsored. They've not sort of asked me to say anything about it. It's just genuinely like a piece of software which is well worth sort of having a look into. So it's got all these algorithms that you can play around with, which will feed candidates different content depending on the stage they're at, what their cookies say, and the type of content that they spent time on before throughout the recruitment process. So it's super clever stuff and something that just it helps, if not automates, the personal touch by feeding the right content, that personal content to the candidate, as well as sort of sending follow-up messages off the interview or whatever it may well be and stage they're at.
That's the paradox, isn't it? That these automated technologies end up providing a more human experience for people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an odd one, but it's a wonderful piece of software, and more and more, AI. I'm sure people have looked at this ChatGPT, for example, as another option. Stuff is becoming more personal, even though it is technology, which is terrifying, but it's also quite interesting as well, and something to look into.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. One of the biggest challenges for organisations are their ATS systems. We've talked about this before with previous guests, and this has an impact massively on the candidate experience. What's your experience with ATS systems, and how do you feel that you could improve the application process?
So with ATS systems, it's really easy to take the default version of it, and you've integrated it, and therefore that's sort of like your version of it. My experience of ATS systems is that they're called default because or at least the comms that come out of the ATS system are called default because they are exactly that. They feel default, they look default. All of those messages, all of those touch points need to be looked into. And that's well worth doing within your business anyway, is looking at all of those touch points, understanding at which point does the candidate get a piece of communication from you, a piece of content from you. What's the delay between that touch point and the next touch point? Should they be getting something in between that delay? And what can your ATS system do to help with that? But yeah, so I would say absolutely have a look at what messages are going out through your ATS. How many times you'll see a message go out from a no reply email is amazing. There's plenty that do it, where they'll send a message off the back of the interview saying, or even before the interview saying, oh, here's the login details from a no reply email address. And that's not exactly a great candidate experience when the candidate inevitably probably want to respond and say, oh, is there anything I need to prepare for? Is there anything I need to be aware of before the interview? And they've had a message from a no reply email. It just takes away that human part of the recruitment process when it's something as simple as that. So check that out, but also what the message actually says. Who's it signed off by? Is it a person? Is it the team? Is it the business? So yeah, ATSs, they're great, whole load of functionality within it, but I think sometimes the bit that's missed is that candidate experience bit of it. Is it human? Does it feel default, or does it feel personal?
You mentioned ChatGPT, and that seems to be the hot thing right now. But I've seen some chatbots which have been pretty impressive in embodying the brand personality of the organisation when it comes to responding to candidates' questions. And I think this is a positive shift, because when it comes to technology, I think it's often been sold as how it benefits the recruiter, and particularly with things like volume hires, about how you can essentially weed out a large number of candidates that aren't going to be right for the role before you have to get a human involved to interview them. So in your process, at what point do you have a human intervention, or is that something that could happen at any stage?
At the moment, we're building, so I'm not going to quote sort of the processes we have, because I wouldn't say they're finessed or they haven't got there yet. But we try to, at the major points, have some level of human interaction. And you would expect that anyway. Once you've had your application sent in, you would expect probably to have some automated message at the point of your recruiter reviewing that application, deciding to progress you forward. There should then be that sort of human aspect, because that's when that initial interaction, that introduction to the company almost. And then following on from that, the major stages being interview, hire, and all of those steps that you take a candidate on throughout the interview process, there should be that human interaction.
And if we lived in a perfect world, what would that process look like for candidates, do you think?
A perfect process, it's difficult, because you don't want to overburden the candidate with too many comms, but then at the same time, you want them to be fed through the journey, being engaged, buying into your organisation, buying into your recruiters, your hiring managers, the process. So it's a really difficult task, because you have to walk a bit of a fine line. And you also need to make sure that the comms are relevant. You need to make sure that even if you're feeding them content throughout the journey, that content is relevant as well. So it is a difficult task, and this is why the candidate experience requires a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and a lot of iteration. In the simplest form, and this is something we're trying to implement, and we'll implement it at Aviv, is just the bare bones of it, the basics of it, is that at every major touch point of a candidate's journey, so from application, interview 1, interview 2, interview 3, offer stage and onboarding, there needs to be some element of human interaction with them. Ideally a phone call, ideally sort of a video call, whatever it is, there's some sort of human buy-in moment. And those, again, always need to be representative of your brand, and that's why you need to bring whoever is involved in that touch point along with you on this journey, on the development of your candidate experience. So when you are building your candidate experience, when you're iterating on it, have your hiring managers in the room, have your L&D, your HR VPs, your recruiters in the room as well, so that they understand what the benefits are of doing this, so that they understand how to sell your brand, so to speak, how to market you as an employer, because inevitably that candidate is going to have other options, whether that be now or when they're at step 2 or step 3 or even offer stage. Other recruiters will still be on their tail.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess it's understanding where the bad experience is experienced. So is that in the time when you're applying for a job on the ATS, or is it the time that the recruiter gets back to you? So yeah, that's a really great point.
Also, for me, we borrow so much from consumer marketing and the customer journey, and those prompts and nudges that you get when you leave things in your basket have been around for ages. Are we close to having customer and candidate journeys as a similar thing? You know, add job to basket, check out to apply? Yeah,
I'm a huge believer is that customer and candidate go hand in hand. It's one of the same thing. And I always look at the experience of Uber, for example. Everyone's probably used an Uber in some capacity in their lives, and you don't really notice you're using a piece of tech because it's just so seamless. You get sort of notifications throughout your journey as well. You know where you want to go, you drop a pin. You know where you are, you drop a pin. You get a notification saying a driver's on their way. They're going to be this long. You can track them on a map. And then you get in the car, and the journey is the journey. And then you get to the end, and you can leave a review if you want. You can leave a tip. And it's all just little notifications, little things that pop up throughout the journey that just make that journey fairly seamless. And that's the point that you want to get to with your candidate experiences. It's almost so good that they don't notice they're going through technology. It's personal, it's seamless. And yeah, like you say, they're getting notifications which are personal to that individual, but using technology.
Yeah, so basically be more Uber.
Yeah.
Love that. So thanks, Ryan. We've come to the end of the podcast now. So our final question, which we're asking all our guests, is what are your top reads at the moment?
I'm a big advocate of a book called Atomic Habits. It's a superb book. It's all about the aggregation of marginal gains, which is really relevant to candidate experience. It's all about making minor improvements, which, when sort of amalgamated, are sort of massive improvements. I've read it a couple of times now, and there's some brilliant stuff in there. There was one aspect I always remember about the British cycling team, and that they weren't exactly that well renowned. And then this coach came in, made all these tiny little adjustments, like the pillows they slept on, how they treated the wheels, the seat of the bike, and it developed the cycling team into what we know them as now today, which are world champions, Olympic winners, gold medalists. So yeah, would really highly recommend that book. Something to have a look into and a read.
Oh, no, it keeps on popping up on my recommended list, actually.
Yeah, and I've actually got it downloaded, so I'll make a point of listening to it.
Yeah, highly recommend it. It's a really good book.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Ryan. We've really enjoyed speaking with you.
No, thanks for having me, most importantly. It's really, really, really nice to be invited on. Cheers. Take care.
And thank you for listening to our Leap Listens podcast. To listen to other experts in the industry, head on over to our website, that's leapcreate.co.uk, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. And of course, if you have any people communication challenges requiring highly creative solutions, please reach out to me. I'm Roger, or Sarah McGregor on LinkedIn. Thanks very much.